Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here with you again. In fact, I have very mixed emotions because I love seeing you all and being here with you, with my brothers here who are holding on to the banner so strongly in the wind. But I'm also really angry because we have to do this again, that we still have this evil that's going on. I'm an advocacy for human rights and religious freedom for over 30 years, in the last 5 as the Director of Advocacy for Katartismos Global. And I'm here to support Falun Gong once again in standing against the CCP and its appalling genocidal actions towards Falun Gong for 26 years, along with its wider human rights violations against the Uyghur, Hong Kongers, China's Christians, and people of various captive nations, captive to the CCP. And today we demonstrate against not just the 26 years of persecution, but the alarming escalation of transnational repression of Falun Gong around the world. First, I want to celebrate passage of House Resolution 1540, the Falun Gong Protection Act, and House Resolution 1503, the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act of 2025, both passed this past May. They both address forced organ harvesting, horrific and excruciating, painful murder that is tantamount to genocide and was declared a crime against humanity in 2019. H.R. 1540 was introduced by U.S. Representative Scott Perry, and also we heard from Congressman Pat Ryan from New York. Scott Perry from Pennsylvania, we say kudos, who's a retired brigadier general, and he understands the evil of the CCP against the people of China, freedom lovers in the diaspora, and the threat that it poses to the United States as well. H.R. 1503 was introduced by Congressman Chris Smith from New Jersey. I'm sure you know that Chairman Smith is a legendary hero of us all, fighting for human rights and religious freedom issues, as well as for the unborn for decades. It's a great idea to let Congressman Perry, Congressman Ryan, Chairman Smith, and all the co-sponsors know that you appreciate their caring about this issue. And if your congressman was not a co-sponsor, get in touch with them and ask them why. Why were they not co-sponsors of these important pieces of legislation? This is well-deserved sanctions for the CCP. Congressman Perry's press release said the Falun Gong Protection Act imposes sanctions on those who participate in or facilitate forced organ harvesting. The bill directs the Secretary of State to determine whether CCP's persecution of Falun Gong constitutes crimes against humanity or genocide, alongside a required report on CCP organ transplant policies. And it makes the U.S. policy to avoid any cooperation with the CCP as long as its forced organ transplant industry continues. And I think, very importantly, the bill says that within a year, a list of all United States grants over the past 10 years that have supported research on organ transplantation in the PRC or in collaboration between a Chinese and United States entity must be reported. I'm thinking of U.S. medical colleges and universities. Where are they getting their organs from? The bill is now sitting in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, so it's time to pressure your senators as well. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee has scheduled a hearing next Tuesday on the status of democracy and human rights in Hong Kong. So they're headed in the right direction when it comes to CCP human rights violations. We urge them to pass the Falun Gong Protection Act swiftly, too. Secondly, the CCP attacks Shenyun, along with Falun Gong, and that represents a grave escalation of methods of infiltration to subvert Falun Gong's voice and influence, warning America about the CCP and threats to freedom. Shenyun is a powerful, effective conveyor of truth because it transcends factual information and statistics. The power of art in advocacy seems to have been discovered, unfortunately, by the CCP. So they are targeting the creative and beautiful work of Shenyun, which is described as follows. Shenyun showcases the beauty and spiritual depth of authentic Chinese culture before it was almost destroyed by communism. So we really need to stop that kind of escalation. One of the methods used by the CCP to demonize Falun Gong and Shenyun is the New York Times newspaper. The New York Times investigation of Falun Gong and Shenyun is appalling. I would stop getting the New York Times, but I stopped getting it many years ago. But you need to think about that if you're reading the New York Times. The Falun Dafa Information Center concludes an article that says 12 things to know about the New York Times biased and defamatory investigation by saying the CCP could not have imagined a better ally than the Times in its latest campaign to eliminate Falun Gong globally. What a terrible reputation to have. The newspaper that does the Chinese Communist Party's dirty work. Finally, I want to share with you another example of using the power of the arts in advocacy. I have to admit, I'm a baby boomer generation, and I like reruns on television. A few days ago, I stumbled on an old episode of the television show Diagnosis Murder, with Dick Van Dyke as Mark Sloan, a doctor who helps the police with murder cases. In the episode Living on the Streets Can Be Murder, that first aired in 1996, the murders were of homeless people, and it was found out that their organs were being harvested for rich patients of a greedy, immoral doctor. I probably saw that episode back in 1996, before a lot of you guys were born, and several times on reruns. But this was the first time knowing about organ harvesting as the reality of the CCP, and not only an evil on a fictional television show. I plan to urge my friends who don't yet understand the depth of evil of the CCP to find and watch that show, and then realize that this horror is happening to thousands and thousands and thousands of people today, not primarily for money, but for power and getting rid of truth tellers. Continue to use your voices, speak truth, fight for good legislation, and thank the legislators when they make good bills. And above all, don't lose hope, because there is a God who is above all earthly powers and thrones and regimes, who loves you and who created the nations of the world, including China, for his purposes. And he will not let his purposes be thwarted by evil men forever. End the CCP. Thank you.